But it would be too much to ask for Tulane to win without their starting quarterback. Ole Miss and Tulane, we had a top 25 matchup and a rare occasion where we saw an SEC team go on the road to take on said top 25 team. Ole Miss comes in ranked number 20 in the entire country last weekend, and they took on a Tulane team that, looked pretty good against South Alabama. They remained in the top 25. They were ranked number 24 in the entire country. Now, in this game, we did end up seeing Ole Miss end up pulling it out. It was 37-20. That was what the final score at least appeared to be. As I want to make sure that wasn't anybody important. Here's the thing. We always talk about games and situations and where there's always the type of games, right, where the score looks more lopsided than what the score actually, or how the game actually felt, right? So how about some surprises first and foremost? I mean, we had Ole Miss, and Ole Miss, they are very darn good at running the football. That has been the MO since Lane Kiffin has came to Ole Miss specifically. And in spite of that, what we ended up seeing was Ole Miss was held to less than 100 yards rushing. They were held to less than 3 yards a carry. It was actually kind of impressive to watch the Tulane front seven go to work here. And this ended up becoming a Jackson Dart game where Jackson Dart had to made some big plays with his arm. So how did Ole Miss end up winning this game? How did that end up happening? Well, first and foremost, you have to point towards the turnover battle, okay? So Tulane did end up losing the turnover battle in this one. We saw, their backup quarterback, Kai Horton, throw an interception. Wasn't a great day for him. Only 40% completion percentage, 15 for 37, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Wasn't what you would love to see, but that's what you got. Also, he had 10 carries for negative 28 yards, too. That's also not remotely pretty by any means. We did also see surprisingly good pass rush by Tulane. Tulane had 4 sacks. Ole Miss did end up with 4 sacks, too. So very good pass rushes from both of these teams here. Jackson Dart just found a way to get it done at the end of the day. 17 for 27, 267, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. I'm going to go ahead and say the quiet part out loud. Michael Pratt did not play in this game once again. He didn't play. He was questionable to play coming in. He was a game times decision. In the Southern Alabama game, he was absolutely brilliant. 14 for 15, 294 yards, 4 touchdowns. Fortunately, got hurt in the game, though. He was a game time decision. And unfortunately for him, they just couldn't find a way to figure out how to get Pratt healthy enough to actually play in this game. Because the defense really did all that it could, but it just ran out of gas towards the end. And that's just a reality of being a group of 5 team. You may have a similar level of high-end talent. I mean, Michael Pratt is a very good quarterback that could have NFL aspirations. We also saw this with Tyjae Spears. Tyjae Spears is, of course, in the NFL. He's with the Tennessee Titans now. The depth is not the same at a group of 5 level as it may be at, say, an SEC school, like Ole Miss, for example, right? So that showed in the second half. I mean, you remember how we were talking to how this game was a lot closer than what the score would ultimately indicate? Well, that was a perfect example of that. We saw 20 of Ole Miss's 37 points come in the fourth quarter alone. This was a 7-point game with less than 3 minutes left to play. But we saw Ole Miss get a field goal with 2 minutes left, and then we also saw them get a fumble return. That was the second turnover, and that was the ultimate dagger that unfortunately did lead to Ole Miss winning 37-20. Now, if you're Ole Miss, you're feeling good. You may have not played your very best game, but you still did find a way to win the game ultimately. And Tulane, like that environment was ready. That was a really good environment that Tulane was able to produce on national television. So hats off to Tulane for that. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at what Ole Miss has in store and what does Tulane have in store moving forward. What do we got to look forward to between these two teams as we continue to progress through the rest of the season? Now, for Tulane, this is going to be the toughest game that Tulane will play the entire year. This unfortunately does mean that Tulane will likely not get looked at to make the college football playoff. Historically, there has never been a group of 5 team that has made a college football playoff without going undefeated. Even then, Cincinnati had to go undefeated in the regular season 2 years in a row in order to at first get respect from the committee and then ultimately get that final hurdle and be the first group of 5 team to make a playoff. So for Tulane, that's no longer in the question. We do, however, see they are going to play against Southern Miss. Southern Miss still, I believe they're still in the American Conference now. If I'm not too terribly mistaken, they could be in Conference USA though. Let me just double check real fast. I'm not like 100% sure. Okay, so Southern Miss is in the Sun Belt, so it's a non-conference game still. So they'll have 2 more non-conference games at Southern Miss, and then they have an FCS opponent. Okay, they play Nicholls State. Then they'll get into their American Conference schedule. The only game that I see on Tulane's schedule that could give them some trouble is UTSA. And even then, UTSA hasn't came out the gate nearly as hot as maybe you would like to see UTSA come out the gate. So Tulane should be favored in every other game that they play in this season, and they can easily work themselves back into the top 25. As for Ole Miss, though, Ole Miss does have the pleasure. They needed this win because it is going to get a little bit tougher. They have a gauntlet coming up here towards the end of September. They'll have Georgia Tech, and they should be favored over Georgia Tech. That's going to be a home game. No one too terribly concerned about that. But then they'll have Alabama on the road for their first conference game in SEC play. Now, we have seen Alabama be vulnerable, and I'll talk about those vulnerabilities a little bit later. But for Alabama, they are in what I would consider wounded animal mode. And speaking of wounded animal mode, LSU kind of in that same spot as well. Maybe we dive into that later. Maybe not. We'll have to see what games I want to preview specifically. But Ole Miss is not going to have easy games on his hands either way. So anytime that you can get a game in the bank like this on the road, hats off to Ole Miss, getting the job done. They remain undefeated, and they'll close out conference play or non-conference against Georgia Tech, at least for right now, as they'll prepare for SEC action.